Come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. Never have to cut you out like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they feel strange. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip.
Welcome to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, powered by Blue Wire. Shout out to the new company. My name is Michael-Shawn and You guys can follow me on whatever Elon Musk is calling that app these days. My ad name has not changed. It's also right there under my chin at Mike Dugar, Mikedugar. Shout out to everyone who is watching or listening via our YouTube channel. Seahawks Man to Man is the name of the channel. That's Seahawks Man, the number 2 man. That's also the same thing as our Instagram handle and TikTok. Seahawks Man to Man, Seahawks Man, the number 2 man. Go to all those, like, comment, review, subscribe, reshare, repost, whatever the button is that helps us, press it, please. That means the world to us. Thank you in advance. Chris, go ahead and talk to him.
What is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Christopher Kidd. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at CKIDD206, and that's CKID206.
All right, as promised, our midweek episode, we're going to start with our one big thing coming out of rewatching Seahawks Cardinals in week 9 and go over what stood out most in that game and perhaps what is pertinent as well going into the biggest matchup of the season to date, Seahawks Rams on Sunday at SoFi Stadium in week 11, battle for first place in the NFC West and battle for perhaps the best path to the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. To preview that matchup, we will have Nate Atkins, who covers the Rams for The Athletic, in the back half of our show. But first, as you guys know, Chris and I, we grinded the tape. We watched it, we studied it, we took notes, we laughed at a few screen grabs we sent one another, and we have our one big thing, one apiece, that is from watching the tape. Chris has been kicking it off, and the Seahawks have been winning. So, Chris, continue to kick it off. What is your one big thing after rewatching Seahawks Cardinals?
You didn't tell me nothing about that. Interesting fact, though.
I think you're on a roll here with the wins, and I don't know. We'd have to go back and check. But right now, anecdotally, there is a correlation between when you kick off the pod and the Seahawks winning. So let's not mess that up.
Sounds good. This week, after watching the film on the defensive side of things, one thing came to mind. The other guys. And no, I am not talking about the 2010 movie with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. I ain't talking about that American Buddy Cop film. Not that. I'm talking about the Seahawks other guys, because as you guys know, the Seahawks, they have a lot of injuries with a number of key veterans sidelined because of those injuries. It was the other guys, the young guys who stepped up and showcased, I thought, some skill on the defensive side of the ball. Despite some of the circumstances they were put in, 4th and 5, or 4th and 6, we need to stop here. Some guys come up big, 4th and 1 guys making plays. Their collective performance not only filled the gaps that were left by some of these starters, but it also demonstrated the depth and potential that the Seahawks may have into the future, right? Because we got asked a lot of questions earlier on this season about the depth of this team, if they trade player here and there, whether it's Riq Woolen, you name it, asking for, hey, if the Seahawks make this move, do they have the depth? And in this game, maybe there's some depth there. Not that they would still want to make a deal or bring Riq Woolen back after free agency, whatever the case may be when his deal is up, but they play with a tenacity and communication and willingness to adapt to what Mike Macdonald has been asking these guys to do. I mean, hell, they got the ready squad. And if you're on that ready squad, your number could be called at any moment. And it's important for you to go out there, execute the defensive schemes with efficiency, and just set the tone in key moments. And I think, for one, on Sunday against the Cardinals, as I mentioned, multiple guys stepping up. And I think the coaching staff, including Mike Macdonald, did a really good job of prepping these guys for some of these moments, matching the intensity of what the starters bring. So when you look at it, the Seahawks were without defensive tackle Jay Reed, cornerback Josh Jobe, and middle linebacker Ernest Jones. I'm not including Julian Love because Buddy's been out since week 5, and Tyler Cotta's been doing just fine. He's been doing a really good job. So thumbs up to Tyler Cotta for filling in the last month and just playing ball. And as you guys know, Julian Love's going to miss another 3 weeks. So, with that being said, the guys that stepped up, Tyrese Knight, middle linebacker, Nehemiah Pritchard, cornerback, and big man Brandon Peely. They all got the opportunity out there on Sunday, and they made impactful plays. And that is something that cannot be overlooked, because there are times where you're going to need young guys to step up and make plays. And on Sunday, I thought they did a really good job of that, especially in critical moments. For instance, Brandon Peely, it's 4th and 1 from the 1, and the Cardinals are going to go for it. They have to. They're getting their butts spanked. We all understand that. But Peely, he just whoops John Gaines, the center. He just beats him, gets into the backfield, and he just missed bringing down Bam Knight, but he forced him right into, you guessed it, Ty Okada, who goes low submarines and takes out the legs. Turnover on downs. But it's because Big Peely got in there and disrupted that play from the snap. As soon as the ball is snapped, you see a big guy making an elusive move, get into the backfield, forcing the running back to bounce it outside. And then, what do you know? You have your teammates there to clean it up. It's by committee. Everyone's doing their part, albeit it's a missed tackle. It was a play that created a lane for Ty Okada to make that stop on 4th and 1. And to be honest, I don't know why the Cardinals continue trying to run it on 4th and short, 3rd and 1s. They've been getting stuffed all game. I was wondering, why not just do a play action? You're better off doing that. The Seahawks know you want to run the football. Hell, I knew it. And it wasn't successful. So shout out to the Seahawks D-line and give credit to Peely, who got an opportunity to get some snaps, and he was productive in those snaps. You know what that says to Mike Macdonald? Man, I might have to put him out there even more often to make plays, because he did so in a game that meant so much to this team. Beating on a team that, they have guys banged up. They put their quarterback, Kyler Murray, on IR, and they just got off to a really good start. And another player that made 2 really good plays is Tyrese Knight. He had a really good game. Outside of those sack fumbles, I thought he played a good game overall. And just looking at the tape and what he did and how he was confident. But on that first one, on the 2nd and 11, the Seahawks blitzed. They had 2 different calls. The first call was a blitz. They sent safety Kobe Bryant and Nicky Memori off the right side. And Knight, he was able to scream right up the middle. And he just pops Jacoby as he's trying to make the throw, which causes the fumble. And you guys all know what happened next. DeMarcus Lawrence picks it up and runs it in for a TD. Just a great call by Mike Macdonald, mugging the line of scrimmage. Jacoby Brissett's wondering, I don't know who's coming. Slides the protection one way to the right side. Oh, we got a guy coming right up the middle. Doesn't matter. Gets to the quarterback, forces the fumble. It's just really fun stuff to watch. And again, just watching these young guys develop and be put in positions where Mike Macdonald trusted, right? Mike Macdonald trusting that someone's going to make the play, whether it's Tyrese Knight, whether it's Kobe or Nicky Memori. He knew one of those guys was going to be able to make a play, and they did that. And it was Tyrese Knight on that. And then he does it again in the second quarter, 3rd and 12. So it's a 3rd down. You could blitz. You don't have to blitz. You can send pressure. Mike Macdonald decides to send a pressure. The Seahawks are mugging the line of scrimmage with 7 guys down there. They're showing pressure. They're showing blitz. And at the snap, what is Mike Macdonald famous for doing? Dropping guys into coverage. So he actually drops Ty Okada and Drake Thomas. And the Seahawks send the pressure. And Knight gets through again. I believe it's right off the gut. And he smacks Jacoby, forcing yet another fumble. And yes, you guessed it, Lawrence returns it for another touchdown. So you have 2 back-to-back great plays by Tyrese Knight, who Mike Macdonald trusted to get in there. Maybe it was him, maybe it wasn't him, but the thing is, he's trusting these guys to go out and make plays, and they're doing so. So that has to be a feel-good sign for Mike Macdonald and for said players that are making plays too, because now he called my number, and I did it. I was able to make a play. So now when your number's called in the future, your confidence is already through the roof. And I think that starts with the practices all the way through until it's game time. And the last player I want to give a little love to is Nehemiah Pritchard. The Seahawks very rarely play dime. They do a lot of nickel, big nickel, meaning Nicky Memori, Devin Witherspoon. Those guys are always on the field. It's very rare that they play 6 DBs. I'm pretty sure it's like, I think 20% of the snaps they have ran this season where it's dime. So 6 DBs on the field. On this specific play, it's 4th and 5. You want to have your best coverage guys out there, and that's what Mike Macdonald did. He put Nehemiah Pritchard out there, believed in him. 4th and 5, lined up with the number one guy. Trey McBride, probably debatable. Maybe he's the best receiver. Call it whatever you want. But anywho, Nehemiah's lined up outside versus Marvin Harrison Jr., guy that's taller than him, faster than him, probably. All those things stacked against him. And Harrison runs a pretty strong route. He's able to get some separation at the top of the route, and Jacoby delivers a strike to him, a really good ball. And for the most part, it's a touchdown. When the ball hits Marvin Harrison's hands, it's a touchdown. But give credit to Nehemiah Pritchard. He does not give up on the play. He is able to, I don't know how he did it, in a nanosecond, as they're coming down to the ground, he's able to poke at the ball and knock it out incomplete. So that 4th and 5 at the goal, well, not the goal, they still had, I think, if he gets the first down, they would have 3 yards in their 1st and goal. But nonetheless, it was in the end zone, so it doesn't matter because they're at the 8-yard line. So he swatched the ball out of his hands, and it's a turnover on downs. Yet again, another young player put in that's a difficult position. You're going after guarding one of the top guys on their roster. Not only did you get beat, the guy catches the football, but yet you didn't give up. You stayed composed, you saw a ball, and you attacked it right before you guys hit the ground, and you poked it free. That was just incredible play. I think Mike Macdonald yesterday in his presser stated that was the best play he's probably ever seen. Especially going back and watching it over and over again, seeing the slow-mo with the close-up on the broadcast. Just an incredible play by Nehemiah Pritchard to just not only stay with it, because how many times have players, maybe somebody makes a diving catch and they just, nothing else you can do. Nehemiah didn't see it that way. He saw an opportunity to get his hand in there, and he did that, keeping the Cards out of the end zone. So all those players, I think, just got a little bar of confidence now when their number is called, because there's no guarantee that Josh Jobe will be back for Sunday against the Rams. Nehemiah Pritchard might get an opportunity yet again to go up against a Puka Nacua, a Devontae Adams, if he's healthy coming Sunday. So you're seeing the guys step up in big moments, and I think that just gives them that edge of confidence when they're going up against a really good offense in the Los Angeles Rams coming Sunday. So that was my one big thing when I went back and watched the film, just seeing the young guys make plays here and there. Now, they didn't make 1,000 of them, but they were critical and big plays and big moments that I think sent a message to Mike Macdonald that, hey, you can trust me on this one. I can get out there and do it. And I think that bodes well for these guys moving forward as we talk about what the future of this franchise and how many young guys could still be on this roster and making positive plays, whether it's special teams or you're a starter on defense. So that was my one big thing after looking at the film from the defensive side of things.
Yeah, and who knows if their defense will ever be fully healthy again this year. It's just, if it ain't one thing, it's another. Secondary lasted quite literally like 4 snaps or whatever, 5. However many Nick played 4. I think they ultimately played 5 total against the Niners. Nick goes down. They ain't been healthy since. J Love still got to miss, I think, a couple more weeks now. It's
3.
bad. He already missed 2 games because he didn't play against the Commanders either. I think he went on IR before that. So he's still out for a little bit. Now Jay Reed's out. Hopefully Ernest is back soon. You don't know, like you said, Josh got taken out by his own guy. So who knows how his brain feels. You got to have depth. You got to have depth. All it takes is, remember what Chris we talked about, that 11th guy? The 11th guy. The Seahawks had no 11th guy in that game. The 11th guy was like Pritchett. And that he gave a touchdown to. I think he got pushed, but
he gave a touchdown to Marvin later in the game, and I didn't want to touch on that, but that is true. But
no, I mean, it happens. It happens. It does. That's why the PBU was so huge, because as Mike Macdonald also pointed out, that would have probably made it a 2-score game. I think. Correct. So then it becomes a real game, so to speak. Other than like we're bleeding clock, it's like, oh, wait a minute, do we need to score again? Because these guys are coming. So. Yeah, the Seahawks had no 11th guy against the Cardinals, and if they continue to have no 11th guy, quote unquote, like no weak spot, you're tough to move the ball against. You are, unless you're missing tackles. Unless you are missing tackles, because they did that too. My one big thing, we got a lot of questions about him after the on our post game show. We got questions about Riq Woolen. He is my one big thing after watching the tape. I knew Riq played well live. The stats said that, like the raw ones. And I went and watched. I was like, oh my goodness. This might be one of the best games Riq played. I mean, he was on it, man. And I think that he showed. Well, we already knew Riq had ball skills, right? He led the league in interceptions as a rookie, so we knew he could play the ball. He was a receiver. We knew he could catch. But for whatever reason, we had seen him not make some pretty routine plays, particularly in week 1. Well, and then you just see that's why growth is important. That's why Mike McDonald focuses on the work, you know. And I think someone asked him about that on Monday. It was like, why do you think Riq's playing the ball better? And he was just like, it's the process. You got to work. If you work, you know, the ball finds energy. You know, the work shows. The work is loud. And what we saw on Sunday from Riq was the work. There, he had a bunch of. I'll read you the numbers real fast. I don't like next gen stats numbers sometimes because they go by the nearest defender in coverage, and that can get a little funky, particularly on stuff over the middle. I give you guys an example of why I don't always trust it, and like I like to go back and chart it. You guys remember Nicky Moore had a PBU over the middle against the Texans? Right? I think the ball was going to Nico Collins over the middle. Nick sees it, jumps, knocks it down with one hand. Great play. That went to, I believe, that is not even charted by Next Gen Stats as a nearest defender in coverage play by Nicky Moore, because Josh, I think Job was technically closer to Nico, so he's the nearest defender. So I was looking for the play. I'm like, what the hell? I know he made a play on the ball, so that's why this is one of the few instances where I will use PFF stuff because it usually is on track with how I charted the game. So according to PFF, Riq, and this matches up with the eye test too. Riq was targeted 8 times against the Cardinals, gave up 2 catches for 13 yards, 0 first downs, had 2 pass breakups. One was in the end zone, and the 2 PBUs. Well, he had 3 plays that really were like, okay, this is the Riq that we know, and this is why Mike McDonald doesn't just want to totally give up on the guy and ship him out of town, right? For pennies on the dollar. He had one, the obvious PBU against Marv, where Marv tries to cross his face, break back to the sideline. Riq drops his hips, gets his arm up. This is also why, Chris, this game, quick aside real fast, this game was, for on a few levels, it's another example of why I get some of the stuff at the combine, the more and more I watch football, like why they measure guys' arms. Because between Tyrese's arm length, Tariq's arm length, Nehemiah's arm length, that's a totally different game. Like, just like those guys having a certain arm length through. I don't know how long Tyrese's are, but Nehemiah and Riq, I believe, have pretty long arms. So, and you saw that. Like, Tyrese's arms a little shorter. Well, then maybe those passes aren't fumbles. Maybe they're incomplete. Nehemiah got shorter arms. That might be a tug, you know. And Riq, to bring it back to my guy who's not one big thing, the way he used his arm length in this game is why you have faith and why you don't just punt on a guy like that who's proven he can cover. He had the PBU on the sideline against Marv. Great play. Like, Marv has great twitch. It was a great route for a guy that big. Riq stays right there with him because he's that big too, and just that twitchy. Great, clean PBU right in front of the Cardinals sideline. No flags, no nothing. Perfect, right? That was the first one that stood out. The second one probably is one of my favorite plays because of where it happened. It was the same end zone that he gave up the Jake Tongas play in week 1. He's guarding a tight end again. I was like, okay, this is perfect. It's almost like the thing in the movie where the character in the movie loses. He loses that fight or loses that race or loses that game in the start of a sports movie, and then in the end he's in the same scenario and does it in slow-mo, and the music's playing and everything. So this was on a deep ball to Trey McBride. Riq's right there with him. But if Riq doesn't get his head around, this is a touchdown. Not only is like a corner route, I think, towards the same side as the Jake Tongas, whatever, as same as that same spot. Like, it really was some movie stuff, at least in my mind. Riq not only locate the ball, he gets up there not only with one hand, with 2. You gotta do it 2 hands. Like, not only am I gonna try to knock this thing down, I might catch it. Like, I'm gonna go catch this ball. Tracks it perfectly, knocks it down, clean, no pass interference, nothing. And that's the stuff we know Riq can do. If you're Mike McDonald and you're Carl Scott, Riq's position coach, you're just like, that's it. Because he can do this, we're not about to trade him to Indy for whatever they want. We're not about to trade him to whoever calls, Philly or whoever. Like, we're not about to do that because he can do that. It's been there. It just takes a little work. Because sometimes you got to fall, you know. to be able to get back up. So I thought that play was perfect, textbook stuff. Stuff we've seen Riq do. Just when you have that first game, you're like, uh-oh, he didn't forgot how to track the ball. Or even he got real grabby, I think, in the Arizona game. Didn't locate the ball in the deep ball in the first one. So that was also encouraging, which brings me to my last play that stood out. And we'll have our standout play segment too, but Greek was really just popped in a few ways that I felt were just kind of poetic because he gave up a touchdown that ended the game in week 1 to a tight end, that same end zone, plays it perfectly. It's not the same ball, but plays it perfectly, saves a touchdown. And that Arizona game, he had a deep ball against, I forget who the receiver was. I think the kid from Colorado, maybe. Ends up being a DPI because he doesn't get his head around. Yeah, it was a Colorado kid, Weaver, I believe. Doesn't get his head around, ends up being a DPI, and they score on that drive. I don't remember how the Cardinals scored, but they did. And that was in the part of their fourth quarter comeback. This time, he gets not the same type of ball. I think this might have been another corner route. It's against Marv. This time it's in the other end zone, or the north end zone. And Riq doesn't get his hand on the ball, but he recognizes that Marv's turning around looking for the ball, spins his head around. I was like, okay, let me get that. Let me knock this down. Let me just play my technique, do what I'm supposed to do. The ball ended up going in the dirt, I believe. It wasn't a great ball. Marv didn't track it super well, but it was the process. It was the ball's in the air, get my head around, get my hands up, try to knock it down. That's perfect. And again, that just felt poetic because we saw him not do something like that, get a DPI, lead to a comeback in week 4. Not against the same guy, but in a very similar scenario. So that DPI was right by the end zone in the first game. And if Riq's doing that, and Chris knows this because he watches the tape, when Riq's playing like that, Seahawks are very, very hard to beat. Like let's you guys know I love numbers. Let's get into some Riq numbers right quick. All right. So for the season, Riq is allowing a passer rating of 81.5. This is PFF's numbers. I do like their passer rating numbers as well. So 81.5, right? That's 20th lowest number among corners that have played at least 200 coverage snaps. One of the best marks on the league, or top 20, which is fine, but one of the best marks on the team as well. Josh Jobs a little better, right? And that's with the week 1 numbers in there. That's with giving up the big catch to Purcell and giving up a tug to end the game. If we just look at weeks 2 through 10, which we can't act like week 1 didn't exist, but it kind of shows you how well he's been playing, that pass rating drops to about 70, which is the 14th lowest among corners. And then I dropped the snap threshold to about 100. So guys who have played at least 100 snaps. Also hasn't a lot of touchdown in that span. Like Riq's been locked down since week 1. The tape says it. The number says it. His 5 PBUs. And PBUs, if you see different numbers, sometimes passes defense, they're defended, can be different. For instance, he had one against Marv that goes down as a pass defended. It was like a back shoulder. Marv doesn't catch it. But a PBU, you actually do need to get your hand on the ball. So Riq has 5 of those where you got your hand on the ball, which is like, I think, top 5 among corners in the league. Like, he's playing good ball right now. And we'll talk to Nate about this, but like the way the Rams structure their stuff, you almost have to be able to man up Devontae or have a guy to trust Devontae Adams. You have to have a guy you trust on him that you can say, hey, man, it's 3rd and whatever. We got to dedicate some resources to Puka because he moves everywhere. He's in the slot. He's whatever. He's in motion. Devontae probably not moving. So you stand right here with him and cover him, particularly in the red zone, which is why I keep bringing up these plays that were in the end zone against the Cardinals. You got to be able to cover that dude. If you can, the Seahawks can win on Sunday. Whether it's Riq, Spoon, Josh Jobe, but I think I like Riq in that matchup because of the length and because of the athleticism. You just got to have a different catch radius to catch a ball on Riq. So when he's locked in, that it stood out not only as my one big thing from just because of what it did for the game and how well he played and how well he's been playing since week 1. It's very pertinent, Chris, for this week. If Riq can cover Devontae in those gotta have it situations down the field against those no-look dig routes, against those posts, those in cuts, those out routes on 2nd and long after the Seahawks have stuffed Kyren Williams on 1st down, the game can be had. the game can be had even if you're not pressuring Stafford, because he's not getting pressured that much this year. Even if you're not pressuring him, if you guys are sticky in coverage, you can win this game. So I think Riq's going to be very key. If whether Josh Joe plays or not, I still think whoever plays, they're going to be key in how they guard Devontae. But if it's Riq, it's going to be massive because Stafford's no dummy. He's going to try him. You're going to try him. Just like Jacoby kept trying him. 8 targets is a lot, on a guy as good as him. So Riq was my one big thing from rewatching the tape. He has low key like my one big thing going into week 11 as well. Like if the way he plays like this, they are tough. They are tough. They're tough to stop. So shout out to Riq. He's my one big thing this week. Played really well. Been playing well since week 1, despite trade rumors, despite kind of getting benched here and there throughout the season. Just keep showing up, man. And I know fans are frustrated with him, and even his coaching staff has demoted him a little bit. To keep playing through that is important. To not pout, to not complain, to not, go on social media and say some cryptic stuff that we got to ask you about the next day that's a distraction to your team. Riq ain't done none of that. None of that. Just like, you know what? I'm going to just play. I get traded. I don't. I'm going to be me. And there's value in that. Those are the guys I actually keep around. But whatever. That's a discussion for later in the year. But yeah, Riq's my one big thing. And Chris, yeah, he was locked down. Probably his best. I have to go look at the numbers, but probably one of the best games I've seen him play in the last, probably since his rookie year.
And that's how you want it. You want to have a really good game going up against one of the best offenses in the league. So having to come off a good game like that, that's a way to stack things for all those out there that are wondering, can Riq find some consistency? There you go. Play a really good game against the Cardinals, do a really good job, destroy them, build your confidence up, and get ready for a bigger and better matchup going up against two of the best duo arguably in the NFL with Puka Nacua, and if a healthy Devontae Adams walks out on that field. But that is our one big thing. Mike talked about Riq Woolen and how he was balling on Sunday versus the Cardinals, how important that is moving forward. And I touched on some of the young guys stepping up in the absence of veterans being out with injuries. And that is a vote of confidence for them going up against the Rams this Sunday, depending on, is Josh Jobe going to return? What about Ernest Jones? Is he going to be healthy? And then we know Jay Reed's going to be out for at least a month. So with that being said, coming up next, we're going to preview this game, Seahawks versus Rams. The Rams are favored -3 right now. So the Seahawks have a chance, I must say. Well, we'll get into all of that, figuring out how the Seahawks can attack this defense, and defensively, can they shut down Matthew Stafford, who's been just playing elite football. Got a crazy stat that senior writer for The Athletic, Nate Atkins, is going to give you guys. It might blow you away because we thought Sam Darnold was playing really good football. Yeah, there's a guy in Southern California or in Cali just out there balling right now. So we'll get to that coming up next. Here's our conversation with Nate Atkins, senior writer for The Athletic, covering the Los Angeles Rams.
All right, and we have Nate Atkins making his debut on the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast. Nate, of course, covers the Rams for The Athletic, formerly covered the Colts for the Indy Star. Nate, welcome to the pod. How you doing?
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. It's not a tiny game this week, is it?
Yeah, no, I was just now crunching the numbers. Let's talk about the magnitude of that real fast. Let's quantify it with being some company men here using the Athletics playoff simulator, which I love to toy with. So with a win, the Rams division title odds, according to our simulator, goes up to 78%. With a loss, those odds drop to 33%. For the Seahawks, if they win, their number goes up to 61%. It's around 30-ish right now. With a loss, Seattle's division title odds drop to 18%. So this very hashtag big game, right? This is almost like college-y, where it's like the SEC titles on the line, or a spot in the CFP, or the Orange Bowl, whatever, Rose Bowl. Like this is one of those. Just before we get into the nuts and bolts of each side of the ball for each team, what do you make of this matchup and the magnitude of it coming up?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be fun this week to hear the cliches from players about how every game is big, and then will read off those simulator numbers to them and let them know like they're not all the same. Because the crazy thing I saw too in the simulator is right now, just based on the projections for the rest of the year across the NFL, the Rams, they have projected to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. And yet if they lose this game, they're down to 33% chance to even host a home game. So like there's a difference between potentially out there, and this is true for the Seahawks with the same record, of being the number 1 seed in the NFC, getting a bye in the first round, and then opening at home and needing 2 wins to get to the Super Bowl, or going on the road in the first round and having to go to somewhere like, Philadelphia, or Tampa Bay. And that's the path that the Rams have had. They had last year, I should say. Actually, no, they won 2 years ago. They had that path going to Detroit, against the number 1, one of the top teams in the NFL, and they fell just short. Last year, they got to start at home, but then when they got out in the snow in Philadelphia, they fumbled twice, and they just come up just short in that game. So I know for them, it's huge to be able to have a chance to, not play as many playoff games and then start at home. And then obviously it's true for the Seattle, who's got the 12th man. And, I've only covered one playoff game in my career, and it was in Seattle. And it was the Edge of the Legion of Boom days back in 2016. And it was Lions against Seahawks, and Stafford was in that game. And so I got to feel firsthand what that's like in a playoff environment. So I know the Seahawks certainly want to have that for at least a home game. And then, like I said, the Rams would love to, to be able to start at home as well, rather than go into one of those raucous environments off the jump. And so, it's really big. These are going to be 2 of the best teams in the NFC, but one of them is going to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs. And it's going to feel weird for whoever ends up being that team. But, one of them has to lose this week. So I'm excited to see how it goes.
I'm glad you brought up that Lions game. I was just reminding Chris, and he knew this already, but that game that you're talking about, that playoff game, is the last time the Seahawks hosted a playoff game with fans at that 2016. Oh, wow. Yeah, every other time they've made the playoffs, they've been on the road, except for 2020 when they hosted the Rams during the COVID season. So there was no fans in that one. That's how long it's been. You didn't change jobs a few times since the Seahawks have last hosted a playoff game. And speaking of the scenario you mentioned, where one team is potentially the 1 and one team is potentially like the 5 or something hitting the road. We've seen that in this division, 2019, the Seahawks and Niners, week 17 of that season. They're essentially playing a de facto NFC West title game. The winner gets the 1, the loser gets the 5. The Niners end up winning by like an inch really at the goal line. They end up going to the Super Bowl. The Seahawks end up losing at the Packers, I feel like, in the divisional round. And then the Lions and Vikings were in a very similar situation last year in week 18. Neither one of those teams made the Super Bowl, but you just see the difference in path. The Vikings got their butts kicked out in the desert there in the wild card round. So, yeah, 2 of the best teams in the league, 2 of the best teams in the NFC. Chris and I, we've been watching McVay. We started our podcast the same year that he became the Rams head coach. We've been watching every evolution from using 11 personnel so much that it was a name of a podcast to now what sounds like a heavy personnel evolution. Can you tell us a little bit about, I know this is your first year covering him, but can you tell us a little bit about maybe the difference in the way McVay is structuring his offense and finding success in 2025?
Yeah, it's been an interesting evolution, not just into this year, but within this year. So they, like you said, Sean McVay is a 11 personnel aficionado. Like, he has always loved to find a monster he can play in the slot, which used to be Cooper Kupp. You guys get to see now. And at times that's Puka Nacua when he motions in there. And he loves to be able to run against these kind of lighter fronts that teams will put out there, and likes to be a very balanced offense. And yet this year it's been a shift where when Stafford first got there, they just kept doing that, also because they wanted Stafford to play out of the shotgun and just kind of operate from back there and be able to see everything and just, operate from catch the ball and operate back there. This year they have changed back to more of what they did under Jared Goff with the play action type stuff. But what's different is it's not play action out of 11 personnel. It's often out of 13 personnel. And so 3 tight ends on the field. And it's been a crazy evolution, because to start the year, they didn't really do that early on much at all. They did it for a few plays, almost like to try it out. But for the most part, it was an offense where Stafford's just peppering the ball to Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, and they were like both in the top 7 in the league in targets, and they're moving the ball like crazy, and they're running pretty well in these smaller fronts, but they weren't finishing drives. They weren't getting the ball in the end zone. Their red zone numbers were just not very good for the first 3 or 4 games. And it ended up being a big blessing in disguise, honestly, that Puka got hurt for 1 game. You never want to see an injury, obviously, but he had to miss the trip to London coming off the game against the Ravens. And so they stayed in Baltimore for that week before they flew to London. And that was the week that they just had to roll this out, especially Tutu Atwell got hurt in that Jaguars game and has not come back since either. So some of it's been a little bit out of necessity for injuries, but they're seeing the success of it where they're still running the ball pretty well, mostly because they can run kind of late with leads and wear teams down a little bit that way. But it's just really taken Stafford from a level where he was playing pretty well to start the year, or rather well, to kind of an MVP level. Of the last 3 weeks, he's thrown 4 touchdowns in every single game. And the only other quarterback who's done that in NFL history is a trick question. It's never been done before. So this has kind of opened up everything for them in the red zone specifically, where they'll often have 3 tight ends on the field and 1 receiver is Davante Adams, who leads the league in touchdowns. And so what do defenses want to do? They want to take away Davante Adams. They'll double him and they'll run play action. And there's just always a tight end open. And Stafford seems to know where it's going to be before the play. And then he throws with a no-look pass on a lot of these situations. And it's just working in incredible ways. It's also been a way for them to get their top draft pick on the field. Terrence Ferguson is a second-round rookie out of Oregon. And it was kind of a weird situation first 6 or so weeks where he just wasn't playing at all because they didn't see him as ready to be a blocker. But now when you have 3 tight ends on the field, it stresses each one individually less when there's 3 of them out there, and they can hide him a little bit better as a blocker. And it's just open up to a level where once a game, he either scores a touchdown. Ferguson either scores a touchdown or he has like a 30-yard catch. And they're just getting all these tight ends involved where right now with Terrence as a rookie, it's no one of them is going to be like a tight end 1, but they're all showing pretty capable. They're all scoring touchdowns, and it's working right now. And it's also a way for them to sort of keep Puka Nacua alive, basically, where he was catching so many passes the first month or so of the season that he dealt with 3 different injuries. Now they can kind of save him a little bit more for those 3rd and 4th down, got to have it plays, or the occasional screen that ends up being fairly explosive, but he doesn't have to catch 10 passes a game because the tight ends like last game went for over 100 yards. So they've got a nice balance now where they still have arguably the best receiving tandem in the NFC with Davante Adams and Puka Nacua, but they're not the only guys doing it because they have those tight ends and they have Stafford whose mind's just kind of on a different level right now.
To quantify some of that success that you're talking about they're having on offense, the Rams are 4th in points per drive. They're also 3rd in points per drive on defense. They're the only team in the top 5 in both. So they're killing it right now, moving the ball. They're running the ball really well. And let's talk about this quarterback for a second here. You're new to the show, so you're not familiar with the running bit we have. Usually, someone comes on, I'll ask them, "Hey, is the quarterback?" Insert whoever you cover. Are they good? We're not gonna do that here because it is very freaking clear that Matthew Stafford is good. I'm gonna rattle off some numbers here. Stafford's 4th. These are all via True Media. Stafford is 4th in EPA per drop back. Darnold's 2nd, by the way. Stafford has the 3rd lowest sack rate. Darnold's 2nd. Stafford has the 2nd highest passing touchdown rate. Darnold's 3rd. Stafford has a league high 25 touchdowns and the 5th lowest interception rate in the league. So he's pushing it. He's efficient. He's avoiding negative plays. Nate, you're watching this every week. What the hell has gotten into Matthew, who last I checked has gray in his beard? I was playing like a young buck.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. When I first got here, I got to see Stafford again for the first time in about 5 years or so. We caught up in the locker room, and I told him that just watched him for one practice. His passes look the same. There's just a lot more gray in that beard. And his response was, "Yeah, we're trying to keep it that way." And this season, they have kept it that way, where everything. It was weird coming into the year because he missed almost all at training camp with a back injury. And people were getting pretty nervous, and he's 37 years old. But it turned out that they were already going to rest him for most of training camp anyway, because they really realized that injuries are what are going to bring this guy down, not age, not defenses he's facing. He's always, since I covered him in Detroit, I thought he was always one of the more underappreciated quarterbacks because back then he wasn't in big games very often. He didn't, just didn't get to the playoffs, didn't win a lot. Since he's got to the Rams, he has. But this year just seems to be a combination of, I think that time off really helped him kind of get through this season and be at his best physically. And his his experience is so high that he's not affected by losing those reps very much either. The only area where I thought that affected him is the connection with Davante Adams, because Davante was new. And so they kind of had some reps early in the season that were forced, and especially in the red zone, but they've gotten that all under control where, Davante scored 6 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks and now leads the league in touchdown catches. And it's just an offense that's gotten very comfortable around Stafford, where the offensive line's gotten healthy. They're protecting him really well. Like he said, it's his lowest sack rate in his career. And if you look at Stafford, whenever his best seasons have always been when he's been protected. And that kind of goes without saying for a lot of quarterbacks, but like for Stafford, it's hard to find a lot of answers against him if you aren't pressuring him, because he can make all the throws down the field and he's going to spot something coming open that you were hoping he wouldn't see, that other younger quarterbacks wouldn't see. And he kind of knows that's going to happen before the play. That's the marriage between Stafford and McVay that works so well, is what they're able to do pre-snap. And so he's played, like Davante Adams put it this way the other day. He said, I think he's played at MVP level all season. And I kind of wrote that after the second game I covered of him here, where I said, this is the best he's ever looked. But what's different is everyone now is elevating around him, where he's got the connection with Davante Adams. They're using the 13 personnel and finding all these open tight ends. The running backs, for now, have stopped fumbling, and they're back to being pretty productive. And then that offensive line is just really solidified after some injuries early in the year. And so when there's not a weakness on the offense, what you're doing is you're letting Stafford find the weakness on the defense. And they're dictating that by, when they bring those 3 tight ends on the field, teams have to counter with multiple linebackers. And that just makes it that much harder to handle a team with Puka, Nacua, and Davante Adams, and and springing those tight ends open. So he's in a really comfortable place right now. Every week, it's the same thing. Every week, it's 4 touchdown passes and some no-look highlight, and he's just feeling it in a way that I don't know if he ever really has. He did a shimmy after he threw a touchdown last game, and you don't usually see Stafford celebrate like that. But he's as happy and confident as I've ever seen out of him. And I think he just feels like this is a season that he needed to physically get to. And early in his career, he didn't know if he'd be playing until 37. But now he looks like a guy who could play maybe even to his 40s if he's able to stay healthy. And I think he's really happy to be in this spot and be here with the team that is, for now, delivering on all that.
Speaking of the running backs, let's go with Kyren Williams. He is having a productive season this year. I remember the Rams last season had a couple of injuries with their offensive line, and dudes missed time and their offensive line took a hit. But this year, the offensive line seems to be doing well, and Kyren Williams has recorded the 4th highest rushing success rate at 51.5% among 44 running backs with at least 50 carries this season. He's also forced 36 missed tackles on the ground. That's 5th most in the NFL on a per carry basis. How is he doing it this year? He's been healthy, and he looks good out there.
Yeah, I always think, Kyren Williams, sometimes people look at him, it is somewhat fair as just like a volume back, and that this is a system where a lot of guys could run the ball because they won a Super Bowl with like CJ Anderson back there. But this is what Kyren Williams has been able to do is he's that guy every week. And so like, he's not out there doing necessarily the long run highlight type plays of like a Jonathan Taylor or Bijan Robinson, but he shows up every single week, very productive as a runner. And I think what goes very underrated with him is what he does on third downs, where when they do need him as a receiver, he's been pretty good, but he's really a phenomenal pass protector. And that's really key when you have a Matthew Stafford team. And really the only issue this season for Kyren is what's plagued him throughout his career is his ball security can be lax sometimes. And they lost a game to the 49ers when he fumbled going into the end zone, though he did get punched in the helmet by Fred Warner on that play. But still, it was a brutal moment for him. But I think he's gotten more comfortable with the offensive lineman being back. I think just some of the short yardage plays at the goal line, I just think he was doing a little too much and taking his eye off the ball security, feeling like he had to add one of those broken tackles on that play. Now they're getting him enough of a push, and they're getting him kind of to the edges in a running start to where he's able to use his contact balance, his physicality to break some tackles, and he's just getting a little more creative too. Where there's been a couple of plays he's cut back, and even though he's considered more of a between the tackles north-south runner, he's getting more creative at finding some of these cutback lanes. I think you're just seeing him get more experience as a player, and having played in Sean McVay's offense for a few years now. Now that he's on a veteran contract, he's able to take his game to another level just by being used as a receiver a little bit more, getting a little bit better on ball security, and then having the daringness to cut back and try some of these creative runs, which right now are working because it's different than what he's shown defenders on film in the past. So I think he and Blake Corum have made a pretty nice tandem in the backfield. When they do protect the ball, that's an issue for Blake Corum at times too. But when they aren't fumbling, these guys they tend to get the job done.
Puka Nacua, Mike talked about we have some of the stats for Puka Nacua in that regard, because we talked about Matthew Stafford and how good he's been, but Puka, he is doing really good as well. At one point, for the last 2 years, he's been one of the best receivers in the league, and then he's continuing that. If he didn't get hurt in that week 4 matchup, was it, Nate, where he got that ankle banged up?
That was a little bit later. It was in Baltimore. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, he did get banged up, but right now he is third in receiving yards at the moment. He has 775. Puka's second in yards per route at 3.4. JSN leads at 4.6. Just insane. Puka is averaging 96 yards per game, and he's on pace for 1,600 yards. And the Seahawks have had some issues with Puka. He has lit them up before, and I think this will be an interesting challenge just because Mike Macdonald, his defense is locked in. They've been doing a really good job of eliminating teams' wide receiver one and stuff in the running game, and I think it's just a perfect chess match. How do you see Sean McVay trying to use Puka Nacua, and if Davante Adams is healthy, how do you see them attacking the Seahawks defense that has been so good this season, just as the Rams have?
Yeah, Puka came out this season on absolute fire, where every game, I think it was until that Baltimore game, every game he had at least 8 catches and 85 yards. It was just sort of like he rolls out of bed and he produces. And he looked for several weeks in a row there, he was leading the league in receiving by a big margin. And then the injury happened, and then also JSN happened, where it's like one player in the division's just stealing the spotlight from him a little bit right now. But Puka is he's just one of the toughest players out there, and that's not always what you think of, a treat being there for a top wide receiver. But he just kind of slices up zone coverage. They love to get teams into zone coverage, and they'll just pepper him the ball, and he'll not only settle in and catch it, but he'll get yards after contact. And teams last year when Cooper Kupp got hurt started to run more man coverage against them, and Puka's not as much the same against that because of he's not a burner. So that's why they went out and got Davante Adams. But right now, what they're doing to still find ways to get Puka productive when they go to man looks is on screen passes. And he had 2 last game that were pretty effective, and one of them scored a touchdown. But he's transitioned away from the guy that was catching 8+ passes every game to one that's more there for the clutch plays, because I think they also realized that it wasn't going to be totally sustainable for him to catch this many passes. Like, whereas JSN will run away from, a defense into the end zone on some of his catches, that's not Puka's game. He's going to seek out contact and take contact. And when it's a high volume role, that's led to 3 different injuries he's dealt with. 2 of them have pulled him mid-game, or 3 of them have pulled him mid-game out of a game, and then he missed a game for it. And he's had that a little bit in his career so far. So they wanted to find a way to still get a lot out of him, but not lose him. And so that's where the tight ends have come in, and and the success they're having in the run game, and then Davante Adams finishing off drives more with touchdowns. It's kind of saved Puka for those gotta have it downs where, like, they went for it on 4th down last week. Defense knows the ball's going to Puka. They throw it to him. They go to wrap up for the tackle, and he just lunges for the first down. So he can still do that stuff, and he shows up every week doing that. They're just saving it more for critical downs and critical moments because they want to have him out there. And he's taken a lot of hits, but he also he lives to take those hits. And it's almost like, whereas defenses normally they like to hit receivers and make them feel that early in the game. Like, he wants you to do that to him because that kind of gets his engine revving, and he plays like a running back when he has the ball in his hands. It reminds me Michael Pittman Jr. is like that in Indianapolis. Like there's just certain receivers that are wired a little differently, where they kind of they want the ball in their hands. They want to seek out contact, and they seem to play better when they get a little bit of it. And so right now that's kind of what Puka's been up to. And he's kind of the guy that ideally in this offense, he's going to get you into the red zone, and then Davante Adams is going to finish it. And that was the model early in the year, but the connection with Davante wasn't sharp enough to finish those drives. But now it's working that way, where Davante's 6 touchdowns in 3 weeks, and Puka's still productive. He's just not 8 catches and 12 targets every week. It's more like it's gotten a little bit more efficient, a little bit more explosive as well, because they're finally getting teams to shift coverage away from him over to Davante Adams, and that's opening just a little bit of room for him to work with the ball in his hands.
Well, we talked about 2 good offenses. Well, mainly the Rams for the most part, because we want to know more about the Rams and what they could bring versus the Seahawks. But now let's look at the defense for the Rams that is doing some really good stuff. Right now, there are 191 defensive players to rush the passer at least 100 times this year. The league average pressure rate is 10.9. The Rams have 4 players above that number: Byron Young, Jared Fisk, Jared Verse, and Kobe Turner. They can get after the quarterback in the Seahawks. They have 6 guys: Uchenna Nwosu, Derek Hall, DeMarcus Lawrence, Boye Mafe, Big Leo, and Byron Murphy. With that D-line, are they not blitzing? What's their blitz rate? Are they just sending 4 dudes and saying, hey, get after the quarterback, and they're having success? What are you seeing down there, Nate, and how they're having such a successful season getting after the quarterback and putting pressure on them?
Yeah, they're not a high blitz team. They'll do it with Quentin Lake, especially. He's kind of the guy they try and move all over the back end, and he'll play nickel and strong safety and free safety, and sometimes he'll come in there and blitz. And he got their only quarterback hit last week because the 49ers were throwing so quick to try to avoid that pass rush. But mostly what they just try and get as many of those guys that you mentioned on the field at the same time. So sometimes what they'll do, they love to play dime. They play the most dime of any team, and they'll often do a dime with a 5-man front where it's Poona Ford in the middle, and then it's those other 4 guys around him, where a couple of them, Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk, are sort of these inside-outside kind of versatile players. And then Jared Verse and Byron Young are the guys on the outside or on the edges. And those 2, the edge tandem just plays really well off of each other, because Jared Verse is a power rusher. He sort of collapses the pocket. He makes you chip in with the tight end and put your resources over there. So he'll collapse the pocket and get the pressure. And then Byron Young comes screaming off the edge with 4.3 speed to get the sack. And that's why he's leading the Rams in sacks. I think he's at 9 right now. So it's married up really well. The 49ers did find a way to negate it last week. They only gave up, I think they only gave up 1 quarterback hit, because like I said, they were throwing quickly, but they were productive doing it. And some of that, teams have started to do that. The Saints did that to them. And it makes sense, because otherwise they're going to wreck the game. But also what it does is when the ball's coming up fast, you kind of keep these guys from getting going in the first place. And that's something Kobe Turner brought up to me, is he just didn't feel like they've been able to build the intensity throughout a game to where they get in a 2-minute scenario where it's time to go make that play. Against the 49ers, they didn't seem to really have that juice and momentum. And so that's a way to combat them. And I'm interested to see how the Seahawks do that, where so much of their passing game seems to be, letting JSN develop some of these routes and get down the field and be explosive in that way. But that means holding the ball a little bit more. And it's been shocking to see how much better Sam Darnold is under pressure this year compared to last year, because they got him in the playoff game last year, and I think they had 9 sacks on him. It was sort of like the kryptonite to Sam Darnold. But this year, his numbers under pressure are just so much better. And so if he can play like that, if he can survive their pressure and hold the ball a little bit, he can have a really nice day against what's still probably at best an average group of cornerbacks with Akella Witherspoon out. But it's when teams are forcing quarterbacks to throw kind of earlier than they want, or when the Rams are forcing teams to throw earlier than they want and make desperate plays, that's where their DBs are fit to jump and make plays on the ball. So they've got aggressive, athletic, but smaller outside corners, and then this pass rush that they're hoping just kind of forces you to try and thread a needle against these guys. But if you're able to negate that pass rush a little bit, and if you're able to kind of just take them out of their rhythm, then the DBs can be had, because there is a lacking sort of physical skill set outside without Akella Witherspoon. So I'm curious to see how the Seahawks handle all that this week.
Yeah, man, that pass rush, man. That just whole front is crazy, man. And really, you can when you see teams have the debate of like, okay, we want to build this from the back, we want to build this from the front. You see, the Rams are like the picture perfect example. Like, hey, man, go get you some dogs up front, and you can have just competent DB play. Although I think the safeties, Ram safeties are pretty decent, but you can just have competent corner play and have an elite defense. Which is what the Rams have. Seahawk fans are the main base for who listens to our show. I shouldn't do this, but I will. You guys might want to close your ears here for a second while I read off some of these Rams defensive numbers here, stopping the run. These guys are incredible. 5th in opposing yards per game allowed to running backs. 2nd lowest explosive rush rate is 3.4%. Guys, that is low. The Seahawks are that low too, right? So if you watch the Seahawks every week and you're like, wow, they stopped the run. Okay, the Rams do that just the same way. You know, the longest run, this is probably my favorite Rams stat of the year. The longest run that the Rams have allowed to a running back is 13 yards. That's it. That's it. Now, the Seahawks used to be at that number, and then DeMarcado broke off a 55-yarder to throw off the numbers there. That's it, 13 yards. I think they've done it once or twice, a couple 11-yard runs, 12-yard runs. But no one's breaking anything on the Rams, and the Rams have only allowed, this is my second favorite stat by them, run defense. A running back's only scored once. That's it. One time. And as Nate can tell you, it just happened this week. It was Brian Robinson Jr., I believe, had a 1-yard run on Sunday. That's it. So the running backs they're not getting any explosives, not getting any yards, and not getting in the end zone. Nate, how are they doing this?
It's amazing because the way their season ended last year was by Saquon Barkley. I think he had, in 2 games against them, I think he had 4 different runs of at least 60 yards. And that last game, he and Jalen Hurts just ran wild. And what they would do back then is, because they're built to run a pass rush, but they didn't have the investments in run defense, they would do what a lot of coordinators do and stack the box. But that became very boom or bust, where you make one guy miss in the hole and there's one safety back there in the middle of the field trying to chase this down. So they didn't want to have to overcompensate this year. That was kind of the whole focus of defense in the offseason for them, was just fix the run defense. And so they went out and they signed Poona Ford, former Seahawk, is in here as the nose tackle. And he's been good. I wouldn't say he's like a game breaker, but he's dramatically improved that position. He's kind of unique because he can play out there in the pass rush situations and at least get by. And so he's kind of a rare high snap nose tackle. And then the real big shift has been Nate Landman. They signed him from the Falcons. They somehow got him for 1 year and $1 million to come in here and completely change the run defense, where he's just brings a mix of sure tackling, but also great communication before the snap, and also leadership, where he just kind of gets these guys to do the cliche thing of playing 11 as one. They didn't do that last year, where guys were, they're stacking the box and they're trying to get guys are just kind of playing desperate. This year they're playing a more standard defense, but they're making it happen, and they're making it happen even when they have a lot of DBs on the field, since they run dime so much. So it's been that, and it's really the strength of the back end of this defense is the safeties and how they tackle. And so the mix of Quentin Lake, Cam Curl, and Cam Kitchens, those guys, that's why that long run number is low, because there have been some games where, as good as their run defense has been, there have been some games where running backs were decently efficient. Nick Chubb had a decent day against them. Derrick Henry he was the one guy to go for 100 yards against them so far. Jonathan Taylor was able to get some of those, but they don't ever break it beyond a 5, 6, 7, 8 yard gain, or that 113 yarder, because the safety is always making the tackle. And so what teams have tried to do to get away from them is run to the edges, where you've got these small cornerbacks, and it's like, if you can make one of them miss a tackle, you can make it happen. But it's hard to get to the edges around Jared Verse, because he's even better against the run than he is the pass. He's just kind of a mountain out there on the edge. And so that's probably what I imagine the Seahawks are going to try, is get Kenneth Walker to the edge. And, I can say this I covered Kenneth Walker in his Michigan State season, where it's one of the greatest seasons I've ever seen at the college level, and also one of my last game there is he single-handedly beat Michigan in a top 5 matchup. It was the greatest performance I've ever seen from a college player. So they know that there's a challenge this week, even though the Seahawks have been up and down as a run offense, that they have a guy that can make that kind of explosive run on them. But they have faced some of that too. They faced Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor, and those guys haven't been able to do it so far because they're just able to match up sort of this edge presence with this heat-seeking linebacker in the middle, and then Quentin Lake and Cam Curl, especially on the back end, just kind of limiting everything. And so I think you just have to hope you get into if you're facing them, hope you get into one of those games where you are running with decent efficiency, 4 to 5 yards a carry, and then eventually you can try and get one play to the edge against one of these corners. It's just a little easier said than done right now.
Yeah, and to your point about maybe an instructive example about teams that they've faced, the Indy run game is a little different, and the Baltimore run game is a little different, and the Eagles run game is a little different. But the Niners run game and the way they structure that is very similar to what the Seahawks want to do. And I will, again, this is a maybe close your ears moment for Seahawks fans. I'll read you Christian McCaffrey's numbers against the Rams on Sunday. 12 carries for 30 yards, and his longest run was 5 yards. So structurally, these guys know how to get these guys.
He averaged 2.6 carries against him in the first matchup too. So I thought the 49ers getting George Kittle back was going to change that, because they've run the ball, they've gotten to the edges with George Kittle. And so I thought that was the best testament to how the Rams are limiting teams getting the edge. When they can do it against the George Kittle offense, I think they can do it against most offenses.
That, Nate, is what we call a perfect segue. We're going to get a prediction from you and an over-under. Our over-under, actually, I'm going to focus this on Stafford. We got two options, Chris. I can do his yardage, which I was going to do, but the more I think about it, I love this stat of the streak that he's on. So I kind of want to do one of those, just yay or nay. What do you think? On him continuing the streak.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, cool. So read me, you have it, I believe, Chris, in our doc. Read me the streak that Stafford's on.
It's insane. So Matthew Stafford recorded 280 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and no interceptions. Stafford has now thrown 4+ passing touchdowns with no interception in each of his last 3 games. So 13 touchdowns, 0 interceptions over that span, making the longest such streak both in Stafford's career and in Rams franchise history.
Wow. All right, Nate, let's put it this way. Yay or nay on this? Does Stafford continue? Because I think this will continue. This will factor into any other over-unders on touchdowns, yardage, whatever. Does he continue that streak against the Seahawks on Sunday? Yay or nay?
I'm going to say yay, only because I can't really deny what Stafford's doing right now. Like, I thought last week would be the one where it fell off a little bit. The 49ers are banged up, but it was on the road, and they seem to bring it in that matchup, and it was just the same thing. And some of these games, it's been enough of a blowout that they don't try it late in the game. So I don't think he'll have the overall maybe yardage and maybe completion rate this week the same way he has, because the Seahawks are really good. I think they'll get some pressure on him at times. But it's just one of those where I'm one of those where it just makes sense to bet on streaks to continue rather than snap. And they're showing enough right now that I'm just going to say it continues.
I think your yay answer there I can kind of predict where your game score will go, but let's let you do it. Chris, I believe the line is what? Rams -3
correct.
Down in SoFi. That is correct. Nate, give us your first ever Seahawks man-to-man game score prediction between Seahawks and Rams for first place in the NFC West, week 11 on Sunday afternoon in LA or Inglewood or whatever.
Yeah, I think ultimately these two teams are even enough and explosive enough that I think they're just going to split these two games by winning at home. So I've got the Rams winning this week. I'll go 35-31. So cover by 1 point. I think we're going to see a lot of points because of what I said about Stafford, the level that they're on. And then I do think, though, that there's some holes to exploit for the Seahawks on these DBs. Without Ahkello Witherspoon, they haven't faced a good enough. They faced one starting quarterback in the past month, and that was Trevor Lawrence, who's not exactly lighting it up. So I think the Seahawks will get theirs in this game. I think we're going to see a great shootout back and forth. It's weird with the Rams. I don't want to ever predict them to make a field goal because they don't do that very often. So I want to pick something more like 31-28, but all their points come through touchdowns right now. So I'll go 35-31.
All right, I like it, Chris. Right, got that written down. We'll see some fireworks. That would be fun. It'd be fun to see some fireworks there. Nate, before we get you out of here, anything you want to plug? Whether it's just your social media, any stories you got coming on the Athletic? I imagine people will be more interested to read your stuff this week with the magnitude of this game. So the floor is yours. If anything to plug.
Yeah, I just out of the game on Sunday, I wrote kind of about how the offense evolved around Matthew Stafford to where he's played at the same level all season long, but you're seeing the history come through what everyone else has done for him. So I think that might be an interesting read just to see. It kind of gets into the matchups that the Seahawks are going to have to win with the players around Stafford to get him to come back down to earth right now. And then we're going to have a couple features this week. I'm not sure which one we got to turn out. You know how that life goes where you're juggling a couple and you see who's in the locker room on a Wednesday. So don't want to promise too much there, but I have something kind of interesting on one of the Rams defensive stars, depending on how that shakes out.
All right. And that reminds me, this now on top of this being the Poona Ford revenge game, we also got the Ernest Jones revenge game coming up. He's already played the Rams, but
And
twice
Cooper
now,
Kupp.
actually. Yeah. And then the Cooper Kupp revenge game against the team that said, hey, man, we're done with you. We're going to get Devontae. So we'll see. And that, hey, can't fault them for that move. Like you said, leading the league in touchdown catches. But yeah, thank you, Nate, so much for joining us, man. We appreciate all the insight. That's great insight, man. I love the. There's so much nuts and bolts and stats and streaks and just good ball on both sides to get into with this matchup. I can't wait for Sunday. I will see you down there at SoFi, man. We appreciate you joining us.
Yep. Should be a great game, and we'll see you there.
All right, I want to thank you guys for tapping into the latest edition of the Seahawks Man to Man podcast. Shout out to everyone who's listening or watching via our YouTube channel or shows us love on TikTok and Instagram. The name of those handles and the channel is Seahawks Man to Man. The Seahawks Man, the number 2 man. Just like, comment, review, whatever. Even if you just follow and you only listen to audio, that's cool. Just the support and the numbers means a lot to us on the back end. Helps us keep the show rolling. So thank you so much for that. One last shout out to Nate Atkins. That was some great insight, y'all. Like this is gonna be, I can't wait. It's gonna be such a fun matchup. So shout out to Nate. Does a great job covering the Rams for us. And we will still have our standout plays segment. That'll be a YouTube only exclusive on Friday. That'll drop on Friday. So make sure you subscribe so you know when we get that. And then we'll come back with our post game show, which will drop on Monday. I miss anything, Chris? That's everything. Yeah,
No,
there we
not.
go. All right.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
The dang, I sold some books, so I don't even got the one that's usually on my desk. Oh, here we go. Reach back. There we go. Buy my book, Franchise, Seattle Seahawks, Curated History of the Legion of Boom Era, available wherever books are sold. And yes, I will get you a signed copy. Just had some shipped out today. Actually, so all you gotta do is DM me. All my DMs are open on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever. Just DM me. We'll get it set up. I'll get one signed to you if you can't make it to a game, either here or on the road. If you can, let me know. Like if you're going to be in LA, hit me up. Let me know. I always bring books, but it's good for me to know how many I should bring. You know, I can't just bring 10. I could, but I'm not going to. So just let me know if you want a book. You're going to be in LA, hit me up. Until then, enjoy your week. We'll catch on our standout plays segment on Friday and then post-game show. Peace.
Like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me if you say that's where your mama maybe